Hey everybody, welcome back to Mary Bird's Backyard Garden. I'm Jeff.
And I'm Mary.
And we, Mary, have been away from the podcast for a couple weeks.
And I'm so glad to be back.
We are happy to be back, and we do want to apologize. Our plan was to podcast while we were traveling in Europe, and that just didn't work out for us.
No,
we ran into, as we call
try.
it, technical difficulties.
Technical challenges.
And as an ex-IT guy, an old IT guy, it was very frustrating. I was not able to get that to work, but I don't think I brought the right stuff with us.
It's a work in progress, and we are learning.
We are. But this episode, we did want to highlight some of the things we saw. We were in London. And we traveled to Edinburgh, Scotland. Mm-hmm. And then we were all over the country of Ireland.
The south part of Ireland.
Right,
mm-hmm.
right. The Republic of Ireland.
The Republic of Ireland.
And the one thing that we did is we walked through a lot of parks.
Oh, that was the highlight of the whole trip, I have to say. Mm-hmm.
We saw a lot of parks. We saw some gardens. Some very nice gardens. So we wanted to talk a little bit. And we saw lots of other stuff, obviously. But we wanted to talk a little bit about that. But first, before we get started, we always want to ask what's new in the garden. And we were gone almost 3 weeks. And
3 weeks.
Wow. The garden exploded.
The garden was watched over, but it wasn't, anything done to it too much. We had our grass was mowed by our little grandson and watered. We did have a lot of rain.
They got a lot of rain, which is we missed it all. Of course, we missed all the Texas rain.
We missed we didn't get
the fun of seeing that. But when we came home, you got to admit the garden was wow. It was pretty crazy. It has grown a ton in the time that we were gone.
Remember that we were feeding the birds before we left, and our bird feeder was right out in the open, and we were watching the birds flit back and forth to get their bird food. And now the garden grew so much, we can't find the feeder.
It is definitely covered with some vines.
Covered with morning glories.
Morning glories, okay.
And sweet potatoes.
And everything is green, and it is huge.
The flowers are blooming.
It is. So talk to me about, you went out this morning. We just got back a couple of days ago, but you went out this morning, and what was on our okra plant?
Wow. I had always heard that if you didn't harvest your okra, it would quit. And I figured as we were gone that that would kind of happen, and the okra would kind of spend itself out, and it would be over for the season. And so we got back, and there were okra pods all over the 3 plants that I planted. Huge okra pods.
Huge. They're huge. I mean, they're like
they
8-10 inches, close to 12 inches. They were amazing. They're ridiculous,
and they're
actually.
Probably 2.5 inches in diameter, I would say.
Yeah.
They're huge. We filled up a 5-pound bag.
Yeah, no, you did. You were out there clipping, and they're not. They're obviously a little bit too big to actually
definitely.
eat. But yes,
there are blooms and new okra coming on that are going to be exactly right. I harvested 2 pods that are perfect for eating today. My neighbor taught me to wiggle the tip of the okra pod. If it's bendy and not stiff, that's the perfect time to harvest it.
Okay.
Thank you to my neighbor for teaching me that.
Absolutely.
And so I got 2 pods today, and there is at least 10 more getting ready to. I got to tell you,
those plants are crazy growers here.
I'm about 5'8", and they're over my head.
They are. They're huge. They're huge. But the garden itself is just crazy. Everything is just so,
abundant.
It looks really nice. I don't know if I was expecting that or not, but when they said they got a lot of rain, I was kind of thinking maybe things will take off. But I was shocked how how
Me too.
much everything's bloomed. So it looks really
The
cool.
southern peas are producing like crazy cat. And that's another thing that I had always heard. If you let the pod go too long on the vine, it tells the plant to stop producing.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, nobody harvested anything while we were away. But those vines are just shooting out produce, more
Wow.
produce than I can keep up with. I trimmed off all the old dried pods, and I collected a good quart of
Wow.
pods today, and then there are more coming. So it's very exciting.
It is exciting.
Mm-hmm.
I think the garden saw you and said, "They're back, baby."
Wow.
To quote an old Seinfeld thing.
And, we went outside and you found a beautiful surprise in the holly bushes by our front yard. And this is the first time we have seen the big banana spider.
Oh, man, we got a huge banana spider out there.
He's
We saw that. And the other thing we saw, which is actually kind of rare for Central Texas, was the red dragonfly.
Mm-hmm.
And it has a red, I think it's called like a red skimmer or something. But
Yes.
I mean, it's bright red. And the whole time we've lived here, I've never seen one before.
Mm-mm.
And it was really cool. Of course, as soon as I got my camera and tenderly walked out there to try to get a picture, it decided it was leaving. But maybe it'll come back. We'll try and get a shot of it. Yeah.
Because his color was so vibrant that we could see it from our porch, and we were sort of looking into the sun even.
Yeah, it was
so
an amazing sight. I'll definitely try to get my bigger camera so I don't have to get as close and try to get a picture next time he comes by. So
That would be grand.
It would be grand. So the garden is ready for you to get back in there. I know you've tipped your toe in there a bit. But let's talk about our trip.
Happy to see it. Well, actually, one of the other things I wanted to mention about the garden that I'm quite surprised at this year, we planted bubblegum vista petunias from Proven Winners, and I've talked about them before. However, usually petunias sort of do well in the spring, and they kind of fade out in the hot weather, and maybe you'll have some more petunias possibly later in the year before it gets too cold. But these bubblegum vista petunias are growing completely uncared for. They're growing on top of our Dichondra repens, which is a silver ponyfoot, which is our ground cover. And they are just blooming their little heads off. And they look so beautiful against that gray color. So cheers to the bubblegum vista petunias.
Cheers to them, as we would say in London.
That's correct.
Well, cool. And do you have anything else from the current garden? I know you went
That's
good.
all I was
No. I was jumping the gun. I was ready to get into into what we saw. So let's start. We started our trip in London.
We did.
And we actually stayed in a hotel that was right across from the Hyde Park.
Kensington.
From Kensington Gardens. I'm sorry.
And
from
then
Kensington
I
Gardens.
think Kensington leads into Hyde Park.
Hyde Park. Okay. Yeah. I had it
think
backwards.
they're kind of together a little bit.
But beautiful park.
Wow.
If anyone has been there, and obviously they've seen it, if you've been to New York City, it's Central Park is quite a bit bigger, but it's a beautiful, beautiful park. Lots of people, lots of cool things to see. I'll start with the one thing. So when we had gotten there was a sculpture that had just been put up, and I think it was like the night before because everybody was going. And it was a giant, and I think, Mary, you have how big it was, right?
I think it was 19 and a half feet tall.
And it's a pumpkin. It's a yellow and black. It's called Pumpkin. And it was created by Yayoi Kusama. It's called Serpentine. And it was, they had installed it in the park, I think, the night before. And it was an amazing, just a really cool sculpture. And everyone, that was walking with their children and just kind of hanging out in the park were going by and checking it out. And it was neat. I mean, the park was just it was beautiful. It was just a wonderful wonder. And the big thing too, and throughout our whole trip, it is summer over there, but we're talking 60s and 70 degrees,
Right.
not 95, not 110. So walking, is pleasant. And I do believe, you can hold me to it, I think if I checked back, I think that first day we walked 8 miles.
Oh, we walked an unbelievable amount.
Yeah,
we were shocked when we looked at
yeah,
our
I'm not
step
gonna
count.
lie. I was a little pooped after that, but what else did we saw some other things there in that garden.
It's interesting. I'm looking on the Smithsonian magazine, and they're talking about the artist that does that sculpture, and she or he. Let me look here. I don't know. Yes, it is a woman. She's 95 years old.
Oh my gosh.
It's the largest bronze statue that she has done. And it says that she uses pumpkins and other starchy vegetables as a stand-in for self-portraits.
Wow.
And she always uses polka dots, which is a signature in her work.
Okay.
It was very beautiful.
It was really, really cool to see. I mean, it was we were walking, it was just like there.
And it was, that was the surprise.
Yeah.
And it was cool because there were families, there were large classes of school children walking, there were business people, just a wide variety of people.
Yeah, no, it was amazing. And the trees they have, there's such everything's been there obviously for a long time. But the trees are growing, and their gardens are professionally maintained obviously. But they do some cool bordering with stuff. They really kind of mix up the flowers and the plants, and they use those for borders, and it was really cool. Now, I obviously don't know all the names of everything we saw, but
I don't know the names of everything we saw. That's going to be a definite research project I have for a long time. But I was very surprised to see how many magnolias that were growing and blooming and just looked beautiful. And trees that I had only ever heard about, chestnut trees, hornbeam, I think is one of the trees that we saw. And I was surprised in Kensington that there weren't lots and lots of conifers, because I think in our history, we've traditionally replaced hardwood trees with lots of evergreen type trees, but they have lots and lots and lots of hardwood type trees, and they're just beautiful.
Yeah. It was, we here in Austin, we have a Zilker Park downtown. It's just a green space. But it actually is more of it's beautiful, but it's a green space. This is a park. I mean, there's things, right? I mean, it's a fairly large park. They have little restaurants kind of on the way. And
yes. And one thing to note, in each of the gardens that we went to, the restaurants served outstanding food.
Yeah, they do. They're not like junk food places or just to grab. I mean, they're actually really real restaurants good. Where you can grab something and eat outside. So Kensington was wonderful. London was awesome. Like I said, we did a lot of walking in a lot of parks there.
We did happen to see lots and lots of trees there that are very tall and sort of a purple shade, a dark purple. And as we were walking, remember you kept saying, I think that's a Japanese maple.
Yeah, that's what they look like, yeah.
And they were maple trees. They're not a Japanese maple, but they are a form of a maple tree, and the leaves are so dark purple. They just were gorgeous.
Yeah, they're beautiful, and they're huge. I mean, just huge. Yeah, you're right. I did think they were Japanese maple, but they obviously were something different. But they look like it.
They are a maple.
Yeah, they do. They do look like them. Just lots of different, things you don't see here in Texas. Right. Obviously, their climate's different, which is kind of cool.
They use zonal geraniums, which we would call, I think the name for them is pelargonium, to be honest with you, but we call them a geranium. They have a large flower head, and they have pretty sturdy stems on them. They use those as bedding plants just to cover a flower bed. Well, we really can't do that here because they don't do super well in the heat. You kind of have to bring them into the shade. And another thing they used a lot of was impatiens, that they have more in the sun, of course, than we do.
Right.
Oh my gosh, I saw begonias and a wide variety of real geraniums, not your pelargoniums, which have a smaller flower and just massive beds of them. We saw lilies. We saw a lot of salvia, which is beautiful. Yes.
It was wonderful.
It was wonderful.
Wonderful. So we took ourselves and our trip from London, and we went to Edinburgh, Scotland. And one of the highlights that I know you were looking forward to was visiting the Royal Botanic Garden in Edinburgh. And that is I believe that's a pretty famous botanical garden.
It is an exceptionally worldwide renowned garden.
And the one thing I have to mention up front, we went in Edinburgh. Obviously, the other one was a park, but we went to this botanical garden. We saw some in Ireland. We'll talk about too. But everything is free. There is no. You don't pay to get into anything there. They maintain it. They're beautiful. They have staff, but you do not pay for entry in any of this stuff.
No. And when we bought the map, I did buy a little map. It was like £2. It was not very much at all. And the staff was so friendly and helpful.
They were. I mean, the place was beautiful. So let's talk a little bit about the Royal Botanic Garden in Edinburgh.
Okay.
Because that one was actually, the other one was a park that had some cool stuff in London, obviously. But this was actually a garden.
Well, it's also an educational, where they go, what do I want to say? It is to educate people.
Right.
And it's to learn about plants. It's to educate botanists and horticulturists. So it has a wide impact on everything that they do. And they also have a great database for people to learn about. So it is about 70 acres altogether.
Wow. I see. I did. And I know, we were there for quite a while.
We were.
But obviously we didn't see 70 acres worth of it.
No, not at all.
No.
There are areas that we just didn't even get
Interesting.
to. And
okay.
we walked so
And we did.
much.
We walked a lot. Yeah.
And some of it is to be repaired and having reconstruction done and things. So we weren't able to see like the glass house, the conservatory,
right,
and some of those type of things. But the Royal Botanical Garden in Edinburgh is 350 years old.
Wow.
So a lot of the species that they have do date back to the beginning,
Right.
And I was fascinated because we were able to see sequoias. Now, there are two varieties of sequoias that they feature. They feature a coast redwood and some of the giant redwoods. And they were planted in the 1920s. So they're like 100 years old or something like that. And they're listed as being around 24 meters tall, and that translates to between 78 and 79 feet. And they were stunning.
They were stunning.
They were so beautiful. And I've only seen one giant redwood so many years ago when I was on a trip to California.
Yeah.
But I guess the climate there is like perfect for it. But I was so happy to see that. They have different sections of their garden. So they'll have a woodland garden. They also have they call it the Chinese hillside, featuring more of a Chinese aesthetic. They have a rock garden. And they have, which I don't believe that we saw the rock garden.
I don't remember seeing the rock garden.
No, I don't think we went over that way. Somehow we missed it. But they do feature in one section plants that are from Nepal. Do you remember?
Yes, I do remember that. Yes.
And what caught my attention was that they are common plants that we could, know. Oh, we grow these, like rhododendrons. Of course, rhododendrons, they grow a little bit more shadier here and a little bit more in an acid sort of soil. Probably East Texas is better for a rhododendron. They like a woodland setting, but yeah. And they had plants that I could not identify. I'm researching it currently, but these plants were so tall. They had a sort of a fleshy leaf that grew up from the ground, taller than myself. I could stand under those leaves as though I was a little caterpillar.
Yeah, they were crazy.
Astonishing.
I've never seen anything with leaves that big.
And I am researching. They didn't have a plaque that told me what they were. And so that is definitely on my list to research. But we ran into, they have a garden where they show people how to grow food. And then what I was surprised at, because we read books about gardens in England, and they always talk about the border, the flower border. And my expectation was to go over there and the whole thing would be a border. But they actually don't. They have only one. And remember, there was this giant hedge that was behind it, and I was trying to figure out, like, what was that hedge? It's actually a beech hedge. And it was planted, let me see, in 1906.
Wow.
And there's actually 158 plants that were planted in there. Originally, there was 200, but of course, over time. And so thinking about that, it takes 2 of their staff 2 weeks to trim the hedge in the back of the border.
Oh, my gosh.
Yeah. And it's just beautiful.
It was. The whole place was amazing. And now they did use, that was a huge border, but I like the way they when you're like a walking path, when you're going down a path, kind of on either side of you, they kind of had layers of plants and flowers. It wasn't just like one flower. They kind of had, layers going in, the closest, and then they just kind of went further. But it was really, the place was amazing. And the other thing there, because there was a young lady there that we talked to, so they did mark, they did have some of the trees there that would be, and they marked them if they were the tallest in the United Kingdom. So if they were the tallest of that species in the UK, they would mark them. And they had several of them that were there that were considered to be the tallest, and I'm assuming the oldest at that point in the UK. So that was actually pretty cool. And if you think about it, to do that, somebody had to go around and measure trees, which is, remember, I think I commented that to you. I said, that's pretty cool, but just think about it. Somebody's got to go. How do you do that?
How do you do that?
Maybe with, technology now, it's not quite as hard, but anyway, I thought it was pretty cool.
With
and they had them. Yeah, I don't know. Or, some kind of who knows.
I did take pictures of a lot of those plaques, but of course, I took so many pictures.
Yeah, we took a lot of pictures.
It would take a little bit of time to figure that out. But yeah, whether it was the oldest of the species or whether it was the tallest, there was something remarkable about that specimen. They noted it on a special designation. Just
a cool place. The Botanic Art was really an amazing place. It was a great experience. Again, beautiful day in the 60s. you could walk around leisurely. Not the places they're just open to the public. They're not overcrowded.
I know.
I mean, everybody's pretty much, it's just like a park-like experience until you realize you're in this amazing, botanical garden. That's a worldwide type of thing. So,
and they do offer learning online. They offer I haven't researched everything about them, but they do offer a database where you could find out about plants. Of course, I love my Ladybird Johnson Wildflower Center because they offer the same thing.
They do.
And you can have so much at your fingertips these days to learn about. Unfortunately, I tried to use my little app on my phone.
It kept saying everything was the same thing.
Everything was a dicot.
Everything's a dicot.
Okay, that's all it would tell
me.
Yeah,
the app was I'm going to give it a 0 out of 5.
I know.
On the things that weren't marked, you were trying. It was dicot. This one, dicot. Come on now.
The one thing they had that I fell in love with, and okay, so they did have a lot of foxgloves. Remember those purple bell-shaped flowers that were blooming? They had a lot of those. But one thing they had that would be difficult for us to grow here was a giant Himalayan lily. And they bloom, and they were those plants that were like about 9 feet tall and had the flowers coming out from them. And, they had hollyhocks. I fell in love with the hollyhocks too.
Yeah, I mean, they had, the variety was just amazing.
But the variety was, like you said, very well planned so that you would walk along and the next thing would catch your interest.
Right.
It wasn't just this giant melting pot.
No, and it wasn't, I'll say it wasn't monotonous.
No.
And they had like sections and yeah, you're right. As you're walking through, you're not seeing the same thing over and over again. And the way they landscaped it too was a little different each time. So it was really, I mean, if you guys ever get a chance to visit, I would highly recommend. And clearly, it was 70 acres. We didn't see. We're gonna go back because we were there for a long time, but we obviously didn't see 70 acres.
I have to say, plan to eat there because what they grow in their kitchen gardens are represented in the cafe.
That is absolutely correct. So they have a cafe there, and they do use everything from the garden.
It was delicious.
Pretty cool.
Yeah, it was one of the best meals that we had on the trip.
It was really, really good and very popular. I mean, it's like you said, it's not just a little snack place. It's actually a very nice little restaurant. You can eat outside and enjoy the garden while you're eating.
So I don't know if you remember this, but during our trip through the kitchen gardens, we came to this one little section that was like for plants that provide medicine. And so it was based in a circle design with pie wedges coming out. And one of the signs that was included was for sphagnum moss. And during World War I, they ran out of dressings, like field dressings, and they couldn't get it. So the doctors would use sphagnum moss to help dress the wounds because it provided antiseptic properties, and it's like 2 or 3 times more absorbent than cotton. And so I thought that's
pretty cool.
Very interesting little factoid.
I forgot. Yeah, that section was really neat because they did have it broken down with fruits, vegetables, and then obviously they had those types of things as well. But again, everything like unbelievably well maintained. I mean, it's just crazy considering there's no entry fee. So obviously the country or the city or whatever is footing that bill, but. And they do take, contributions, but it's amazing. It was an amazing place.
I agree.
Yeah. So when we took ourselves from Scotland,
We did.
We traveled to
my
Ireland.
Goodness. Now.
And so we went.
A pretty good story.
Yeah, we did take ourselves to Ireland. We decided to rent a car.
That was going to be the major part of the story.
We rented a car. If you go to Ireland, if you've been, you will know that the road, number one, they drive on the left side of the road, and which we've never done. The cars, I mean, here I have a truck and an SUV. You could never do that there.
No.
I mean, the cars we had a Toyota Yaris that we barely fit in, but very happy that we had a Yaris.
We are delighted.
Because the roads are unbelievably small.
They are.
I mean, they are just tiny. And
they're like one lane. And if there are two cars that are coming towards each other, you kind of have to pull off. You have to pull over.
Yeah, it's amazing. And in the cities, obviously, it's not like it. But we drove the country, and we kind of went all over to see some of the things, including a garden we'll talk about. But yes, it was. I will say I would highly recommend, if you can, when you go there, to rent a car, because you're not going to see some of the things we saw if you're on a bus, just kind of going from point A to point B. So when you're driving, you can hit all these little, we found a beach. I would not have thought there was a beach, and I don't know, maybe didn't realize it, but it was called Inch Beach. Just a beautiful beach. And, there were people surfing, there's people on the beach. Again, it's not an overcrowded situation there, obviously. But we never would have seen that or maybe we wouldn't have stopped if you're on a bus or something. We saw an ancient burial ground.
Oh, that was amazing.
Right? That was just like, who would have thought that, right? It was called the Portal Tomb. And that was, I believe that was in Kilcorny is where it was. And I mean, we're talking about something that was created BC. And they made these giant tombs out of rock. And if you're thinking about the technology to do, these are like huge pieces of rock.
It was as though, I mean, what can I even describe it? Like if you picked up your solid driveway and mounted it up onto.
Yeah, I don't even know how they did that. So they built these tombs that are very famous. There's not a lot of them left, but we were able to see that just because we were driving through. It was in the middle of a rocky area, and it was just a cool thing to see.
It was very cool.
You can see there's some castles on the way that just have signs.
You could get out and
you can just
walk around.
Yeah, these are just castles that have sign. You can stop, you can walk up to them and walk around inside and kind of check them out. So again, if you could never do that if you weren't kind of on your own a little bit. And it's the people there are unbelievably friendly in all the places, in London, in Scotland, and they were very, very friendly people.
And that made the whole trip.
It did make the trip. The people, you get to go experience and kind of meet the people there was just fantastic. Would not hesitate to go back at all. But as we journeyed, so one of the key things we saw, so we went to the Cliffs of Moher, which are famous cliffs in Ireland. We tried. I had some equipment. We were going to try to record a podcast there and then come back. That just didn't work.
I think we recorded it, but our stumbling block happened after. Yeah.
So we I had the equipment for Mary and I to actually kind of talk about it while we're there. And we did. But I had an iPad with me, and the iPad wasn't going to be enough to edit and do whatever we needed to do. So we do have the recording. We just didn't have anything to do with it.
So if I could paint a picture of where we were standing while we were recording, and there were a lot of people around us, but it didn't feel terribly crowded. We were standing on the edge of a cliff that's, it has to be, like 150 feet drop.
Oh, huge. Yeah, just huge.
So in front of us, we were looking out into the ocean, And we were watching the seagulls and the other water birds that were flying. And to the back of us, standing to the back of us, were Guernsey cows.
Yeah, cows grazing.
And a flock of sheep right against the fence, right behind it. Because it's actually, part of it is a national park and part of it is private property. And so that made my whole day.
It was cool.
That was very cool. And these cliffs were just spectacular, and the breeze was blowing, and we happened to have a beautiful sunny day. And we did our recording, and maybe one of these days we'll be able to
maybe we could figure out something to do. Yeah, because we were trying to narrate a little bit about what we saw, but it was fun. But it is a rugged coastline, but you're way up, so it's the Cliffs of Moher in Ireland. Just an amazing. I mean, it's a must see place. If you look at anything on Ireland on what to do and see, you'll find it there. And yes, we drove up there, and it was a nice little drive. There's places to stop on the way. So it is a very nice drive.
One of the little stops, they didn't have it going on while we were there, but they do the sheepdog.
They did, yeah.
Demonstrations, which would be very interesting.
That would be pretty cool. We went from there. So then we did visit we were in Killarney, Ireland, and we visited the Killarney National Park.
We did.
So the one thing if you guys have been there, this is kind of old news to you, but if you've never been to Ireland or any of those places, when they say national park, for us, it's not the Grand Canyon. For here, it's Grand Canyon this is a national park that is kind of like a big garden area, right? I mean, it's kind of similar. It was similar to the botanical garden in a way, because it had walking paths and it had well-maintained gardens all around. But what did you see when we were there?
Oh, what I loved about the national park was they are trying to preserve the local deer and the local wildlife. So a lot of the animals had been hunted out and almost to extinction in years past. And so they're trying to bring back the deer. I'm sorry, I don't remember the name of that specific deer, but they were just so friendly.
They were. It was a smaller, kind of a smaller deer.
And they're have access to equestrians. They have access to bicyclists, walkers, and it's beautiful.
It was beautiful, and what it's called Killarney National Park, and it's kind of the sub name is the Muckross House and Gardens. And
one side of it is sort of on the wild, and you could go and walk around an old castle. And then on the other side of the park, you go to the Muckross house.
Right. And we did both.
We did.
We did both. And in the garden side, there's, they've got kind of different sections. They've got an arboretum. They've got a rockery. They've got gardens and things like that. And on the one side, this is where we took what they call a jaunty car. Right, a horse.
We did.
We had a young man that took us. It was myself and Mary and our daughter that was on the trip. It was just three of us, and he took us for about an hour and a half, kind of on the horse and wagon, I guess I'll call it. Probably the most, and he was a very much an Irish young man, which surprised us when he said that he had spent a lot of time in Austin.
I know.
And knew all about Austin.
He knew the street names. He knew the restaurants.
And so it made the trip so much better because as he's going, he's obviously talking about the history of the gardens and the paths in the park. But we could also kind of have this other conversation about, his experiences here in Texas and kind of contrasting, the same things we saw, food, food type differences and things like that. So it was, I will tell you, it was about an hour and a half. It took us up to the castle there and then back, but it was amazing.
It was.
Yeah. It was probably one of the highlights, just the conversation with someone,
Yes,
and being able to speak with local people is just amazing. And then we did walk the gardens, and the gardens were spectacular again.
They were. Now,
yeah.
I really enjoyed the Rockery. Did you say
it was a Rockery? It was called the Rockery, yes.
And I enjoyed that so much. All types of alpine plants, growing in these little crevices or where they've stacked the rocks together, and just gorgeous. Now, today, while we were walking around our complex here, we ran into this one limestone that was butted up against another limestone, and in the middle of that little crevice, there was a plant growing. It's not lantana. It's I want to say vervain. I'm not sure that's quite right. But yes, and I was reminded about the Rockery that we were in there.
Yeah.
They were just growing in the oddest places that you never thought a plant would grow.
It was just beautiful and full too. I mean, not, it was really, really an amazing place to visit. The one thing I like there, they have a huge glass greenhouse. It wasn't open to the pub, as far as being able to go inside, but obviously it's glass, so you can see inside anyway. And I'd read where they had actually moved it piece by piece from a private residence some time ago, and it was just like I've never seen anything like it. It was the whole thing was glass, and it was just huge, and it was an amazing sight to see.
The glass panels were very interesting because they overlapped one another, like you would find roofing materials or shiplap or something like that.
Right.
And that's how the water was directed away from the house. But at the bottom and at the top, they had some special sized windows that would open to allow airflow through the greenhouse. And the design was just so interesting. I just,
it was.
It
was just, I mean, I don't know what estate or private residence it moved from. Obviously, it was very old. But it was just, my gosh, I couldn't even imagine having something like that on your property. It would be pretty cool. All right. Well,
we did see in here, we saw some formal gardens. And they had used, of course, boxwoods. They use a lot of boxwoods. We saw so many topiaries that were made from bay trees that just gorgeous, And they had a knot garden, which I really enjoyed seeing. And then the one plant that took me by surprise was called a red hot poker.
I remember those. Yeah, I do remember seeing those.
Yeah, they're beautiful. They send up a gorgeous orange, bright orange and yellow spiked flower. So, yeah, I enjoyed that very much.
No, it was, I mean, it was just, it was amazing. It was a great trip, obviously for other reasons, but just to be able to see some of these places.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, that's not something, we've traveled our share here in the U.S. and there's obviously beautiful places here. But it's kind of cool to go over and see because these things the gardens are so old and I mean, they've been maintained for so long.
Yes.
They're not, it's not a new thing.
No.
So
the, like the Mudcross House Gardens were back in the started like back in the 1850s or something like that. And, so they have been developed over such a long time.
They have. And most of them, even some of them have, you can see older residents or a castle or something there too. So
yeah, we did not. Sometimes we wouldn't do the tours. Sometimes you could purchase a tour to go inside the private residence and stuff like that. And we chose, maybe not this time. Maybe we'll do it the next time. But the gardens were so extensive that we were ready to sit down by the time we quit.
Yeah, we were putting a lot of miles.
Put a lot of miles.
Yeah, we definitely put a lot of miles on. Well worth it. Like I said, if never would have been able to do that much walking here in Texas at the in the weather here. But at 60 some degrees, honestly, it wasn't, wasn't as bad. And the fact that they had little restaurants on site and places where you could stop and take breaks, it was really, really cool experience. So I would definitely recommend all those places we just spoke about. I mean, if you're in London, definitely go check out the parks there. There's a lot of activity, a lot of, they use the parks. There's kids playing everywhere. They've got soccer going on.
That was hilarious. Before we went into the Royal Botanical Gardens, we had stopped and we had gotten a cup of coffee and, of course, a scone at this little coffee shop. I think it might have been called the Milkshake. I can't remember now.
Yeah.
But we came out of the door of the coffee shop and my husband glanced to the left and you said, "Oh my goodness, they're playing."
They were playing baseball in Scotland.
Baseball.
And on a field. And that, if for those of you who are not sports fans, that is not a sport that they do
common.
much in Scotland. But they had full uniform. They weren't little kids. They were, adults. And they were playing. And I did snap a picture and send it back to our kids here because we're big baseball fans here. And I was shocked. And I think we had even asked one of the Uber drivers that we had is like, we saw these guys playing baseball, and he was like, "Dad, nobody here plays baseball." I said, "Well, somebody's playing. They have uniforms and everything." And that was fun. That was pretty cool. But just a great experience overall to see and meet the people over there. We Ubered a lot when we didn't have the car, and I'm not a great Uber advocate here, I guess in our areas here, but. That was an easy way to get around. It's regulated a lot more over there as well. And just being able to talk to those, they're all very talkative and they're very proud of their countries, which they should be. So you get a lot of the flavor of the country over there and you get to just kind of have a good chat with them. And I think it was a really cool experience.
It was.
Well, good.
I agree.
Well, before we go, I know so that was our trip. That was our trip report. We've come back and we've given a trip report. What else did you want to talk about?
Well, while we were there in Edinburgh, you had noticed that there was a cute bookstore, and we love bookstores, and it was called the Type Wronger. And the handle of the store was that it had started in a TARDIS. And indeed, this gentleman had started selling books outside of a phone box.
He did.
in one of the markets there in Edinburgh. And he was very nice, super nice. We went and visited in his bookshop. And as I was talking to some of the attendants there, they recommended a book. And I had heard about it before, but I had never really settled on it. And it's called Braiding Sweetgrass. And I have to tell you that I did purchase it, and I am enjoying that book so much. It is a combination of, she's talking about the plants. And I do believe that she has a degree in botany, but she also is quite poetic in her descriptions and in her conversation around the plants and why they are important. And I'm taking my time. I'm just going chapter by chapter through the book, and I'm just beginning, but I would recommend it wholeheartedly. And the whole experience of talking to the people at the Type Wronger and finding out about this book just made it much more enjoyable. So that's my input for book recommendations.
Very good. Yeah, I know you did enjoy it. We love bookstores, and we did enjoy it. We were in there for quite a while.
We were. Yes.
So, all right. Well, very good. And again, everyone, we are happy to be back online here. And
we missed you.
We did miss you. We tried. I'm going to be honest with you. We tried. It just wasn't working out for us. So, but we're back. Now, Mary's got a hugely, I'm not even going to say overgrown because it just looks cool, garden in the backyard. She's got lots of ideas now from the trips that I think will be
so many, yes,
passing by you. Maybe creating a little work for me. I don't know. I mean, I actually like the some of the things I saw as well, as far as the bordering and things like that. So
good. I want to hear more about
yeah,
that.
no, I know you do. Well, I'm going to be selective. No, I'm just kidding. But we're happy to be back, and we hope you guys stick with us, and we'll be back next week, same time next week.
In Mary Bird's Backyard Garden.
In Mary Bird's Backyard Garden. We hope you join us.
Please. Happy gardening,
happy
everyone.
Happy gardening, and we'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye.